Today on The Dead Life, I'm talking to Sharon Prentice. She's a psychologist and author of Becoming Starlight, Surviving Grief and Mending the Wounds of Loss. She's here to open minds by sharing her near-death experience and how it transformed her life. When she works with her clients, she focuses on aligning their mind, body, and soul because, as she says, they're all connected. I know my listeners will come away from today's show with a new sense of self and a laundry list for their soul. You can follow me on Instagram at Medium Allison, on my Facebook fan page, on my YouTube channel, or you can see me live in Scottsdale, Arizona on June 18th at the McCormick. For ticket information, go to AllisonDubois.com. Well, Sharon, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Allison. I look forward to it.
Oh, me too. Me too. So I didn't get to, I was looking at your bio, and one of the things that seems to have been a big pivotal point in your life was the great tragedy of losing your husband and your daughter. So that must have been excruciatingly painful. Can you tell us a little bit about what you went through?
Yeah, it was. I lost my daughter first, my husband a few years later. And the interesting thing that happened was, I've been raised in the church like most Southerners, Southern Baptist. And, you get yelled at from the pulpit, do this, do that, and everything's going to be fine. Be the perfect little girl. And I was. And then when my daughter died, I went through the same thing that most parents go through when they lose their child before they lose their child, the begging, the bargaining, the pleading, the take me, not her. And then she died anyway. And I realized that if there was a God, he hadn't heard me. He didn't know me. I didn't know him. So everything I had ever learned my entire life just fell away because it was all not real. And then my husband was getting sick at the same time. And the same thing happened, only the anger and the rage that I was left with when my daughter died just carried over to his death.
Sure.
It was absolutely the most horrendous two experiences of my whole life, but that changed my life. It altered my entire path because that was when I had the shared death experience when my husband died.
Do you think your daughter dying maybe escalated your husband's illness or whatever he was going through, that it was a chain reaction?
It absolutely was, because we weren't there for each other.
Right.
The grief was so incredibly strong. It took over our lives. I would look at him and I would see her.
Yeah.
He would look at me and he would see her. I blamed him. He blamed me. Even though we knew that neither of us was to blame, we had to blame somebody.
Right.
Since I didn't believe in God anymore, I couldn't even blame him anymore.
Yeah.
And it was one of these things where it was a really rough patch. It really was. She died in Chicago, and my husband was in the military, and he was heading to SEER training because he was going to war. And so he was going to be gone a lot. He was gone for weeks on end going through the SEER training, and there was no one there to take care of him and no one there to take care of me. So the grief grew and grew and grew and grew.
And possibly some resentment as well.
A lot.
Yeah.
A lot. Because he wasn't there for me. I blame him for that. I wasn't there for him. He blamed me for that.
Right.
Even though we tried.
Sure.
When the pain and the grief is so great.
It's interesting with grief because kind of as most of us are born alone, grief, although you have people around you, you could be in a room full of people and feel entirely alone.
Yes.
Or that you're watching the world go on around you and everybody seems fine but you. Yes. That's what it feels like.
That's exactly what it was like. And when we moved from Chicago to San Diego, I made sure that the apartment we lived in was adults only. I didn't want to be around children. And then I found I didn't want to be around adults. I didn't want to be around anybody. So I would get in the car and just drive.
Yeah.
Just so I could be alone.
In search of yourself.
Yeah.
Sure.
Absolutely.
So the impact from your loss, that led to you writing your book?
Yeah, it's a funny, not but funny thing that happened. after the shared death experience, I was in college at the time. I was in medical school, and then I realized medical school was not the place because I wasn't going to be the pill popper. I
Right.
didn't want to be the person to give pills to people because I never helped anybody. So I transferred over to graduate school. Um, and what happened was my internship was at Georgetown with a man who did a lot of death and dying, a lot of grief. And the more patients that I interacted with who were terminally ill and their parents, there
Hmm.
always came the time when I could say to them, let me tell you a story. Let me tell you a story. And then I would tell them my story. And
Hmm.
that's what led to Starlight, because what eventually happened is they said, would you please write this down for us so that when we're not with you years from now, we can go back and read it and remember. So that's how Starlight was born.
So you inspired a lot of people with your own story, in turn helping them through their own struggles, which is very inspirational. And so you did work in hospices. Do you have any, and I like to ask my guests this who do work in hospice, do you have any favorite story of somebody's time of passing or something that really struck you as special in that moment?
It's really interesting. There's one room, I do one room at this particular hospice that I work with. Matter of fact, it's the room right across the hall from where my mom died.
Hmm.
And that room at night, everybody loves to go sit there because of the things that happen in there. There are so many stories, Allison. I don't really have any particular favorite. It's just you can hear the nurses and you can hear the doctors. And I've seen this myself, that
Hmm.
when someone starts to pass, you can feel.
Hmm.
You can actually feel it in the room. Some people have seen the spirit leave. I'm of the opinion that the soul starts to leave, a good 3 days before the body actually passes. There's that process
Yeah,
and then the moment of death.
right.
And so many things happen during that time. People have seen someone come and get them. People have seen
Hmm.
wheels of wheelchairs
Yes.
coming to get whoever it was that was passing. There are some amazing, amazing stories that happen.
It sounds like another book for you. It
Yeah,
sounds like
it's actually very, very incredible. The things that you can see, the things you feel. You know,
people love the inspirational stories from around time of death. It helps them to not be afraid of death themselves. And
yes,
so it's an important story to be written by you and anybody who's worked in hospice. And I know from what I do that the dead come through and talk about being there before the person
yeah,
died, that they were waiting for them. So you'll start to see people who are going to die say the name of the person they see in the room, or my grandpa's here, he's waiting for me, and animals that are there that they missed. And
yes.
it's so amazing. And it's so interesting that there are people that don't feel that don't, like living people walking the earth, that don't believe in a soul.
It's crazy. I have heard conversations, and I tell everybody, I keep notebooks and pens for the families, but I do
Hmm.
not let any of my patients die alone if I can help it. And I keep these notebooks and pens for the family, and I say, write down
Yeah.
what they say, because so many people have called later and said, you are not going to believe what I found out. Some of the names, they record the conversations, they write down who these people were talking to. And then when they start doing some research, it's like, that was my great great grandmother, or that was my, so and so. And it's like, you can just see the heart expand. You can see the spirit just open up. And this happens
Hmm.
all the time. This happens all the time in her.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I wish, because I know cameras can capture spirits. I
Right.
mean, I've seen it. I've seen it in orbs. I've seen it in swirls of light. You see it as an image of a person. And if they could actually have somebody who photographed time of passing to see what they could capture on film, would be fascinating
Yeah,
to see.
it would. They have done some research where they actually put weights on the bed. Have you heard of that? Have you heard of
Uh-uh.
this?
No.
I wish I could remember the name of the person who did this research. I can send it to you, where they actually found that at the moment of death,
Yeah.
that the bed actually loses a certain number of ounces
Oh,
as
yes.
oh,
Okay.
it is just the coolest thing.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it really is. It's absolutely amazing. That's why I love hospice. People look at me like I'm out of my mind, but I really love it. One of my goals is to teach people that the process
Mhm.
of dying is so different from the actual moment of death. That's a homecoming. That's a going home,
Yeah.
you know?
We spend our life trying to figure out how to live, and it's not surprising that when it comes to time of death, people don't know how to let go, or
Yeah.
they're afraid of it. And we doing what we do and being sensitives understand that there's something bigger on the other side, and all the people that were taken from you throughout your life are returned to you. What a glorious moment. And that although we may feel sad, and I tell clients this, the dead grieve with us because their heaven isn't complete until we're there.
Yes.
So they wait for us.
They
And
wait for us.
it's not a sadness that they're missing us because they're around us. They're empaths. They can feel what we feel. They know what's going on. They can sample our lives. So it's the living that just destroy ourselves in this guilt of trying to process our grief and the death and letting go. We're just not good at letting go of other people in our lives.
We're not. And I used to get myself into trouble when I first started doing this because my initial reaction when someone would pass is I'd start smiling.
Mhm.
I really would. I'd start
Yeah.
smiling because I would say to myself, now they know.
Hmm.
Now they know. So I finally got to the point where I would leave the room, to leave the family with the person that had just passed and then wait till the smile goes away and then go back.
Yeah.
Uh,
I really enjoy that they revert to a younger age when they pass, and I'll tell my client the number, the age they went back to, which is their version of heaven on earth. And I'll say, 23. I just had this reading actually this week. I said, your mom's showing 23, so she went back to 23. And she met your dad yet? Yes, she met my dad. That's when they were in love, and I was just born. I'm like, so you're part of your mom's heaven. She chose the husband, even though they ended up divorced later in life. They chose each other on the other side because that was the happiest either of them had ever been.
oh my,
And they went back to that time. So we smile because we see the life, and they
yeah,
always say, the deceased always say, you're the dead ones. We're more alive than you are. And they're so
absolutely.
right.
That actually happened. It's so funny that you say that. That actually happened when my husband died. A shared death experience is a little bit different than the near death experience.
Well, can you tell us a little bit about that so that the listeners understand?
Yeah, the shared death experience is where someone is kind of invited along
Hmm.
to witness the aftermath of physical death. Okay, there's
Hmm.
nothing wrong with you. It's like, come on, come on. And so it was an incredible experience. And I saw him, he was there and he was young. That's what the
Yeah.
fascinating thing was.
Hmm.
He was young and healthy and vibrant and smiling. And it was just the most amazing thing. So when you were saying they go back,
Hmm.
to an age where everything was wonderful, that I'm going, oh my God, Allison, you have no idea what you're saying. Oh my God.
Well,
No.
and you could very well, when you pass, decide to go back to when you guys were in the honeymoon phase and choose each other before things got complicated or ego got in the way. A lot of them apologized for their ego and saying that was the destruction of the union, and they regret it. And if they could go back and do it again, they'd hold on to you. And I always find that really beautiful.
People ask me all the time when it's my turn, who do I want to see first? I want to see my daughter first.
Of course.
She was just a baby. And I have wondered so many times how old she's going to be. So you're bringing this conversation up. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're hitting the tea leaves, kid.
All the feels.
Yeah.
So can I ask you what some of the practices that help you to work through your grief, like what those are for my audience, for the people who are out there grieving?
Sure. I do a tremendous amount of sacred word meditation. Sacred word meditation is when it comes to just plain old meditating, a lot of people think you got to clear your mind, of course, and that's when you start thinking about you got to take the trash out and you got to,
Yeah.
yeah, design your meditation room like eat, pray, love. But when it comes to sacred word, it is exactly what it says. You find a word and you meditate on that particular word, and it can be anything. It can be God, it can be the universe, it can be your child's name, like it was for me when I started.
Mm-hmm.
And you meditate on that word, and there's something about it that takes you into this heart of heart that the mystics used to talk about,
Mm-hmm.
where the only people that are allowed in there is your creator and you, all that divinity,
Mm-hmm.
co-joining, of the humanity, of our humanity and our divinity meets in that heart of hearts. And when you really meditate on what to you is a sacred word, it takes you right there and it puts you right at the foot of all creation.
Wow.
It is calming and it is peaceful, and it takes you beyond peace and beyond joy and beyond everything that you can think of to this. I have trouble finding a word for what it is because it's everything good and kind and wonderful, and yet it has no name.
Right. Well, it's a feeling that most living people never understand in their lifetime. So I
Yeah,
get that.
yeah.
So with your daughter, did you ever have an interaction with her after she passed? Did you
No,
dream about her or anything?
no, because for the longest time, I was afraid to.
Mm-hmm.
I was really afraid. I was so angry, Allison. I was so, I was angry at the universe. I was angry at everything because everything I thought I knew, everything I thought I knew ended up being not true. So there was no love in the world. There was no peace in the world. There was nothing in the world. There was just me wandering around alone. And the thought of seeing her, dreaming about her, or anything, I wasn't ready for it.
Understood.
You
Yeah,
know, I,
that's hard.
yeah, I wasn't.
People ask about the anger, and I say it sort of feels like you want to rip the roof off of heaven. Like you want to
Absolutely.
open it up and take them back. It's just I stood in church and yelled at God myself when my dad died. So I mean, I understand that.
Yeah, and I've had so many people say, "Oh, well, you just didn't have enough faith," and I'm like, "Oh, please, give me a break." I mean, I have moved
Don't you
beyond.
love it how people tell you how you're wrong when you're the one grieving? It's like, could
Yeah,
you
I
keep your
know.
2 cents to yourself?
Yeah, people telling you how to grieve, and then I heard a lot of you didn't believe, enough. You didn't this or this or this, but you're going to understand this. I'm more than a lot of people. I don't have faith anymore. I don't believe anymore. I know,
Hmm. Yeah.
and that is just the biggest difference in the world. So when I hear people say things like your faith wasn't strong enough or whatever, I'm like, yeah, okay.
Well,
There's a
maybe that wasn't supposed to be part of your experience. It has nothing to do with your faith.
no, it had absolutely nothing because I can point out, 20, 30 people sitting in the same room who all believe something different.
Right.
There's such a difference between this organized mess that we have down here and what the reality of it all is.
Yes.
You know,
That's true. And it makes it hard to be in the physical world once you felt what the other side feels like, and it's why people get really ticked off when they're resuscitated, when they're on the other side and they're brought back. They're so pissed because they're like,
you're right. And I used to tell people, I think I even put this in the book too. I'm not quite sure, but I used to tell people that one of the reasons I went into hospice and went into a lot of the death and dying was because I figured if I was near somebody that was dying, I could hitchhike a ride and go back. It never happened again, but, it was one of these
stowaway.
way, take me back again because I knew it was possible. But that passed pretty quickly. That was kind of a selfish thing, to be thinking. But it's just, as I'm sure you know more than most people walking the planet, that once you have seen it and know it,
Yeah.
there's no fear
No.
anymore. The fear just goes away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's exciting actually. I get to see the women that go back to like 1962 to the Christmas cocktail parties where they're glammed up in their dresses and their hair's just so, and they're with the man they love with his thin tie and his suit. And I see the hors d'oeuvres and the jello molds and everything that they have around. And I just love it.
That
I get a sample time.
Yeah, that is it's absolutely amazing. Now, I have seen Steve, my husband, and I have had really, really vivid dreams about my dad. Matter
Uh-huh.
of fact, I even heard my dad one time because I was getting ready to go into surgery. And I was kind of afraid of the surgery. And I was like, Daddy, I just want to talk to you just once, just once. And, the last 5 minutes before you go to sleep, whatever you put in your brain, that's what you're going to think about.
Sure.
And in the middle of the night, I woke up because I heard my father calling my name, and then I was fine. So nobody is ever going to be able to convince me that this is not real because I've seen it. I've seen it for myself.
So I had a question about, I've always felt as though children who are grieving almost become invisible to adults. We don't know how to help them. They can't heal themselves. What advice would you give to the parents of a grieving child to help them to work through their own pain and grief? Is there something for children that you see as different in a practice rather than what you would tell an adult they should do?
There really is. And it's such a simple thing. It sounds very simple. Listen.
Mhm.
You have to listen. Adults try so hard to take the grief away, and they camouflage it
Mhm.
with all kinds of, he's in a better place, or mom is
Right.
fine now, or there's no more pain, or, here, have this stuffed animal, or, they try and take it away instead of actually listening to the child. Most people think that kids are going to be involved too much in magical thinking, you know,
Right.
and not really be able to tell them what they're feeling. But kids are amazing.
Yeah.
They know more than you think they know. But people need to learn to listen to them and not try to take it away from them.
Right. They need to be heard and they need to be able to talk about the person that died without being shut down every time they bring them up.
Absolutely. And we just have this tendency to try and take it away from adults, but especially to try to take it away from kids. And that just makes the kid go inside, and then it ends up coming out in much uglier ways later on.
Absolutely. Yeah. It'll destroy them from the inside out if it
Yeah.
stays inside. And I find with children, animals help them to heal because they put their love into this physical thing that is representing the parent or the person that they lost.
Yes.
And a t-shirt of the person who died stuffed with a pillow with ribbons like tying off the end for them to sleep with. They need something that keeps them close, that connects them physically, not mommy's in heaven. That seems so far to them. They're like, where's heaven? So they need something that that's tangible.
Yeah,
I find
kids don't really have the definite concept of what death is, depending on their age. You can say they know that somebody has died, and yet a week later they'll say, when are they coming home?
right.
And when you try and continually take that away,
Mm-hmm.
it really does a lot of damage. So I tell people, no matter how young the kid is, you got to listen to them.
The one piece of
Validate them. You have to validate what they're feeling.
absolutely. The one piece of wisdom that I think works for kids and adults is perspective and changing their perspective. And every day you wake up's a good day because you're a day closer to seeing them again. You're moving towards them. You're not leaving them behind.
Yes.
They're your present and your future. And once they realize getting out of bed's a good thing because you're actually a day closer to them, it changes their perspective in movement in their life.
And I tell families all the time, please talk about the person that you've lost.
Right.
Don't never talk about them. Don't put the pictures away. So many people want to, by the time the person comes home, the family member comes home, the well-wishers and the do-gooders have taken away the pictures and moved the clothes into boxes and
Yeah.
then given to Goodwill and all of that within days. That's
I find it's crazy that 2 weeks after someone dies, the phone stops ringing. Like everybody sent the card, the casseroles have been dropped off. People don't know what to say to you. You lose friends. Like everything changes.
I lost a ton of friends because when my daughter died, nobody knew what to say to me. And then followed with my husband's death, I became this pariah.
You were contagious.
Yes. Yeah, because they saw me and they could see the possibilities in
right
their lives.
And that scares the hell out of them.
Oh man, it did. And so I lost so many friends.
Oh, you replaced those friends with more enlightened friends.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, oh yeah. It was amazing the difference from one day to the next.
It is. All the people that tell you how much they love you and are always like, hey, love you. And then they're just gone. It's like, okay,
Yeah,
I don't need that.
or the ones that come back, within 6 or 7 weeks when you've really just started the grief process. It really takes that long,
Right.
for your body to
Yeah.
accept the fact that this person's coming back. And then you still grieving. You want to go out on a date? I got somebody for you to, it's like, excuse me.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I got a lot of, and I see that
Inappropriate.
they do it all the time. They do it, and people refuse to talk to you about, your child, your husband or whatever. And I love it when somebody brings up their names.
Yeah. Yeah. I would expect you would. They're your heaven. They were your heaven on earth. You say in order to be healthy, happy, and all magical, you must be in balance physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually.
Yes.
Of course, we're talking about people without serious mental health issues, but you go on to say that spiritual wellness is the priority because without it, the entire system crashes.
Yes.
Can you talk to my listeners a little bit about that?
I am of the absolute opinion, as I said something before about the co-joining of our humanity and our divinity. We are divine. That's it. We are. And when that goes down, what's left? From the very minute we're born, that's stripped from us, as we are told our names, who we're going to be, what school we're going to go to, how we're going to dress, what religion we're going to have. All of these things, we are told, this is you. And that negates that very thought of God that we came here to be. And we search our entire lives to find that. A lot of mental illness, it's funny that you mentioned mental illness, has a spiritual basis to it. Dr. Moody and I did a lot of work on that. And it's amazing what you find.
Did you write about that in your book?
Dr. Moody wrote a couple of books. Matter of fact, he's writing one now. I think it just came out called God is Bigger Than the Bible.
Great.
Really interesting book.
Yeah.
Lots of schizophrenics and a lot of people who are bipolar and all of this type. You can trace this stuff back to spiritual. But if you talk to the regular Western trained, psychology that's out there now, they negate every bit of it. They don't touch it. They get almost right to the edge. And then it's like, I can't go there.
We'll medicate them.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens. And when people start to realize that divine part of them is so freaking starved.
Yeah.
And they start looking at it and they start searching for it. First, your life's going to fall apart. I mean, it really is. If people think it's, the straight line to healing. It's no. But when you're spiritually deprived, you're going to get sick. Your body is going to show you. You're going to get sick. Okay. Your mind is going to show you. You're going to get sick. People don't pay attention. Either they don't know about it, they haven't heard about it, they're afraid of it. There's all kinds of reasons. So I always start with the spiritual, always. So people know what to expect when they walk into my office, because the first thing most of them do is start crying.
Well, because they finally have somebody there that's going to listen to them and that cares.
I do it very, very differently. Because I know how important the spiritual is. If you don't fix that part, if you don't delve into that part of who you are.
So you're a psychologist that also practices spiritualism, and you had some other practices woven in. What's your mode of therapy for people?
It depends on what the person wants. One of the first thing I do is temperament theory. I do a temperament profile on every single person that walks in the room. Temperament profile is based on the fact, if you want to go to scripture, it's, I knew you before I formed you in your mother's womb. Okay. You are that thought of God. It was like he's saying, you know what? I want to show this part of me in the world. Bam, there's Allison. Okay. And that is the part that we lose. So the temperament profile, it's so amazing. It's 97% accurate. Hippocrates was the first one that came up with it. It's been around for that long.
Wow.
Everybody who does it is like just falling out on the floor because it's so incredibly accurate, but it takes you back to who you're supposed to be. And then depending on what someone needs, I always practice or teach people about sacred prayer, sacred word, centering prayer, theta healing, which is a energy type healing. There's all kinds of different forms, and it depends on what somebody needs, why they are coming.
Okay.
You know,
I'm
people come for
I'm
reasons.
glad you exist. I mean, it's nice to know that there's somebody out there who sees both the psychology and the soul. You've got the educational background and you've got your own life experience where you're not preaching to people. You're
Mm.
telling them your story and what you've been through, and that's relatable.
That the only reason I do it is because of what I went through. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing it. And I found out very early in my practice that without that spiritual side, it didn't work. I
I
wasn't
think
helping anybody.
I think it's really interesting that some people say, why did it happen to me? I was 30 when my dad died. I'm his only child. And I was so angry. I had to plan the funeral. I was 30 picking out a casket and, well, what they're going to say at his funeral, what music was going to be played. Frank Sinatra, My Way, obviously. That's how my dad lived. It's the kind of party he would have wanted. And so I'm going through all of this and I just heard a voice say, you had to understand your client's pain. But for the fact that you lost your dad, you wouldn't.
Wouldn't.
And so as much as I'm an empath and would feel for them, you don't really understand the level of pain until you've been through it.
That's
And,
right.
and so I wrote his chapter called My Way in my first book, Don't Kiss Him Goodbye. And I wrote it 24 hours after he died because I wanted the pain to be really raw. And I wanted people who lost somebody to understand that I knew
Yes.
that kind of pain
Yes.
and I felt for them.
Yes. And
Yeah.
that's the whole thing. And I get more of that with people who have lost children because
Yeah.
if you haven't gone through that,
Yeah. You don't know.
you just don't get it. And I have so many people say, well, so and so said I should be over it by now, whatever. That leaves such a hole in your very existence that
Yeah. You
it's
never get
all
over it. They're
you
they're
never
part of you.
get over it. Yeah, but
Yeah.
people expect you to because they don't understand that kind of loss.
I like to mute those people
Oh, I do
because
all the time. I went through a total culling. Of course, a lot of people just left me, but I have a very small, intimate circle of people that bring me what I need and I bring them what they need. I don't do negativity. I don't do toxic people.
right.
People are so funny. They're like, gosh, you're so violent. You want to throat punch everybody.
Oh my, I say that too. That's
You
funny.
know? So, but no, it's just I have this uncanny knack of knowing that if someone is going to bring something into my life that I don't want to deal with, I've dealt with enough.
Yeah. Well, you've dealt with more than most people should have to deal with in their lifetime. So I think you get a free hall pass, you can say what you want when you want. And I think everybody should live that way. Actually, I'm not really known for my edit button. I don't know about you, but I'm
Oh, I
just
don't have
not
one.
very good.
I lost mine a long time ago. My family's like, oh my God, she's going to go at it again, but
Yeah.
I am not, and I tell people all the time, I am not a psychologist for everybody. I am not one of those people that doesn't believe in shame, that doesn't believe in guilt, that doesn't believe. I do believe that a little
Right.
bit of shame is good for everybody. I do
Right.
believe that a little bit of guilt is good for everybody. I think that's one of the things that's wrong with us now. People
Yeah.
have forgotten what it means to be shamed of
Yeah.
something that they did, or feel guilty about something that they did. Those
Personal
are-
responsibility, you mean?
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So,
It is kind of amazing. If you watch television shows from 30 years ago, people were much more, their handshake is their bond, like their word is their bond. There was more of an honor to people and their character and their reputation mattered to them more. And now people it's like there's such a gray area that everybody's not seeing things clearly and need to step back again and look at how we're supposed to be as human beings and what's okay and what's unacceptable.
that's a good word. That honor is a good word. I also like nobility. Where
Yeah.
my family is all buried out at Arlington National Cemetery. That's hallowed ground. That's noble.
Right.
And you go out there and you look around at what's going on and you think, people, what are you doing? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That part of civility, that part of being it's not a, is it a pride that you take in the way you act toward people and the way you hold yourself? Is that a good word for it, Allison? Or
Yeah, I think so. I think people lead more with ego and self-entitlement now, which is a really ugly combination. And that's something that's going to go back to the parents and how that child is raised. And rather than blaming society as much, maybe some of the parents need to look at the choices they made. And sometimes you get a kid that's not put together right, and that's a whole other situation. And that's where you come in.
Oh boy, it's so funny. A lot of parents don't like me when they come and they bring their kids because they expect me to say to the kids, you know, you're doing this, and I'll turn around and look at the parents and I'll say, okay,
Yeah.
tell me what's happening here.
Right.
Are you blaming us? You know,
Yeah.
it's an interesting.
Well, people must bring you their children thinking fix them.
Yeah,
And you're looking at the parents saying you're part of the fix. You know, this involves all of us. So it seems like our body is sort of our cocoon, like unimportant later, but vital now. Our soul's the caterpillar, and what we're supposed to be working on in life, our growth, our metamorphosis. We want to achieve being the butterfly, and that means we're done with our cocoon, yet we focus on our body or cocoon more than what's inside that is the real strength and magic of our soul. Why do you think we focus so much on the body and less on the soul as we move through life? Do you think it's a learned thing, that it's, if your parents believe it, it's something you're raised more spiritually, or do you just think we're human beings and physically you see beauty when you're born and you gravitate to what you're familiar with?
Yeah, everybody likes to think that they see past the physical. Okay.
Right.
Oh, I see your soul. Really, such a beautiful soul, such a kind spirit. And then they go and they stand in front of the mirror and work on what they see. Right. I don't know if it's a learned. I know so many people that were raised in the church or were raised very spiritually and fell away.
Yeah.
It wasn't theirs.
Spiritualism's replaced religion on a great level now, I think.
Yeah, it really has. And I think for someone to awaken, if that's the right word,
sure,
to that part of who they truly are, unfortunately, sometimes it takes tremendous trauma.
Sure.
To get there.
Yeah.
You know? And until you get there, I mean, we are a society that praises youth and beauty, and oh my God, look at plastic surgeons and all the money and all. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong.
No, it's not that. I don't get the butt thing. I knew that was going to go south. Yeah. Excuse the pun, but I'm like, that couldn't end well.
You know, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just so much of who we really are.
Yeah.
Left behind, because. Is it that we don't want to look at it? Is it we don't know it's there? Is that, are we afraid of it? Do we not?
We're becoming more basic, it almost seems. And some people are becoming more evolved, and some people are becoming more going back to the Stone Age, and it's all happening at the same time. It's very strange.
Everybody wants to be accepted too. And if you do anything that's out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
And oh, she's so woo-woo. I mean, you know.
Yeah.
It's one of those.
Oh, trust me, I know.
And I get some of that, and it's a very strange thing. All you can do is just smile and wait till they wake up a little bit.
People always say to me, what would you say to skeptics? And I said, I'm good with healthy skepticism. It's the cynics I take more of an issue with. And I said, what I would say to them is see on the other side, because when you die, you're going to find out the truth. And I know I'm not going to get an apology. So let's just agree to disagree.
You know, the thing about cynics, okay, skeptics, okay. The thing about cynics is that they probably believe more in you than you realize it. They're just scared to death.
I do scare them. I kind of like it.
Yeah.
Never turn left. Yeah.
You scare them to death because you are showing them something that they don't have any place to put it.
The cynics usually have abandonment issues, or there's something deeper in childhood, because that kind of anger doesn't come from nowhere. And it has nothing to do with me or what I do. It has to do with themselves. And if they had been loved as a child, those people wouldn't have died and left them, or, you know, they didn't get to make amends before the person died. They're just a lot of issues. Yeah. So, well, gosh, I mean, we'll have to have you back on the show. Where can people find you on social media?
Oh, let's see. Facebook, Instagram, I just started a Twitter account. They made it. I know.
I haven't even looked at my Twitter in years. I'm like done with it.
I'm not a Twitter person at all, but I heard every day, get on Twitter, get on Twitter, get on Twitter.
Twitter's the land of the trolls, I found. It was like, oh my
Used
God.
it ever. So I'm like, oh, do I really have to? And then there's my website. People can, get in touch with me at the website, or they can go to Instagram or Facebook.
Well, and we'll have your links on my website at AlisonDubois.com.
Okay.
So, well, thank you so much for sharing your life and your wisdom with us, and come back anytime. It was delightful talking to you.
This is good. I want to pick your brain.
Anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you for tuning in to The Dead Life. I'm Alison Dubois, and to all of my believers out there, don't stop believing.